Since losing his son Ross to suicide last year, Mike McCarthy has been trying to raise awareness for better mental health support.
Incredible human being. He was kind, he was loving, devoted to his family, and actually was very funny. The kind of son that any parent would be proud of, and we were certainly extremely proud of him and remain proud of him to this day. He was a devoted family man. He loved his little son Charlie, who's just 3 years old, and enjoyed nothing better than to play with Charlie.
My news broadcaster has joined up with Steve Phillip. Steve's son, Jordan, took his own life in 2019. They've joined up and they've met the health secretary, and they're now launching a campaign called Baton of Hope. So we can't wait.
Hello, and thank you for joining us again for our next episode as part of our Honouring Men Month campaign. I wanted to hop on just to warn you that this topic does contain references to suicide and suicide prevention. So if this is something that could be triggering for you, then please be aware. We will provide some links to resources and support at the end of this video, and also in the description and comments. We hope you get as much out of watching this interview as we got out of taking part in it. So once again, thank you for joining us. Month campaign where we're really shining a light on hearing lived experiences of the men in our communities, learning more about their challenges, what support is required, how we can come together so we can work more in unity and showing each other empathy, so that people can just have a better opportunity to get the support I guess they need if it's required, or support others as well, because we feel we've got the tools and the skills to be able to do that. And that's all about hearing lived experiences and stories. And I first heard you speak at an event held by Exclusive Collection, all about mental health and well-being. And it was a really, really powerful event. And I don't think anybody who attended left feeling the same way. And actually you spoke on the first day, and actually quite early on in the event, in the morning, and well, the room just changed. Your journey since then, which obviously we're going to go into a little bit more, I think really, really touched people and realized we don't talk about suicide enough. Because in fact, I've never been into a talk where somebody has spoken openly about suicide from a personal perspective. You often can hear it from a charity perspective, but from a personal, and it was so powerful, which is why I really wanted you on here today. So thank you so much. And I met your wife Glenys as well, who was lovely as well. I hope she is keeping well.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'll pass those comments on to Glenys. She'll be delighted.
Oh, good. Why don't we start off by just talk a little bit about your background. So you've had an amazing kind of career and journey, and it'd be great to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, not at all. I spent 40 years as a reporter and presenter for BBC News, and more latterly for Sky News. I was with Sky News for 20 years. And basically had a very varied career. I didn't specialise in any particular subject, but I was involved in the coverage of some very big stories. Some of them very difficult, dark and traumatic stories, including the Hillsborough disaster, the Ariana Grande terrorist attack in Manchester, the Boston Marathon bombing in the States, covered the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So yeah, it was a sort of very varied career, and one that I sort of look back on with some pride. I've made mistakes, but I've managed to escape relatively unscathed, I think. And because of some of the stuff that I done in my life, and some of the experiences that I'd had, I considered myself to be quite a resilient character.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask that actually, because you must have built up that resilience, because to separate yourself from the environment you're in and the atrocities you're seeing, you've got to, how do you build that skill and resilience, I guess?
Yeah, I think, it's something that you probably develop over time. That's not to say that you're not deeply affected by what's happened. I mean, Hillsborough, for example, all of those years ago in 1989, and that stays with me still. And I made some friends with the families that I got to know, some of the bereaved families, and proud to call some of them friends to this day. And you have to have a professional detachment. I suppose in some ways it's similar to the emergency services that. Of course, you're affected, but you couldn't do your job properly if you didn't have or develop this sense of professional detachment. And I think, or at least I thought, that made me in some ways invincible, ridiculous when I look back now. But yeah, I was looking forward to retirement. I'd enjoyed every minute of my working life. It was like a golden ticket to me, because it was the only thing that I'd wanted to do since the age of about 11. So I was very lucky in that respect. And
when you retired, how did you feel when you retired, Mike? So did any of those kind of, I guess, stories you'd covered or experiences you had, did you find yourself reflecting on them more, or do you think you kind of reflected on them at the time and moved on at the time, or did anything kind of catch up with you in that sense?
I don't think, you've always got the memories, obviously, and they'll always be there. And from time to time, I did reflect if I saw something on the news that was related, or, anything that sort of triggers a memory. And I often used to think about the people who I met. And this is one of the great things about journalism. And, a lot of journalists will tell you this, that you do get to meet some very inspiring people. And I think I was particularly drawn to people who, against all the odds, were fighting for something that they believed in, and went on fighting despite, maybe being told repeatedly, you can never win, you'll never win. This will go on forever. It'll destroy your lives and all the rest of it. And yet, it's great to see that there are people out there so full of, human strength and spirit, and true warriors who, giving a lot of themselves to make things better for other people, even though they're aware in some ways that it's, maybe even sort of damaging their own quality of life or whatever. So that was, to me, looking back, that was the highlight, is to sort of come into contact with those people and to feel the inspiration that you take from people like that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And so you kind of touched on, you retired. So you retired, and I don't know what you were doing with your life exactly, but what did you start doing in your spare time out of interest? Did you turn to golf?
No, I didn't. No, never golf. Sorry to any golfers watching, but no, not really into golf. But I tried to keep my mind ticking over. I did the odd bit of media training. I did some lecturing for broadcast journalism students, and just the odd day here and there. And but otherwise, it's much as I'd enjoyed the job. You kind of know, when you reach a certain age, I think that you know when you're ready.
Yeah.
I just sort of felt that it was sort of my time to sort of, wave goodbye and thank you for the memories and all that.
Nice. But then the pandemic hit, lockdowns came. And I think obviously it was a challenging time for many people. Lives were lost, and we were in our homes, unable to quite often see those that we loved and cared about, and then sadly for you, this is kind of when tragedy kind of struck, I guess. And if you're happy to share what happened, and tell us about your son Ross, that would be great.
Yeah, it was on February the 21st last year. And now,
Such a short time ago.
looking back, yeah, and in some ways it feels like no time at all, and in other ways, I don't know, time passes slowly. But yeah, I sometimes think back to what was going through my mind when I closed my eyes and went to bed on the 20th of February. Did I thank my lucky stars? Did I count my blessings for the good fortune that I'd had, both in terms of the career and also, and more importantly, the great family. I've been sort of with my wife Glenys now for sort of 40 years, and we've got 3 children. I thought that I was that there was little out there that could hurt me. And the phone went at around about 3:30 in the morning, and it was my son's fiance who had called to say that she'd found Ross in the hallway of their home, and the ambulance crew were there, and that she'd call us as soon as they'd got any news, but that it wasn't looking good. And I suppose we, at that moment, just sort of, clung to hope and sort of refused to believe that could be happening. And sure enough, we got a call 5 minutes later to say that Ross had died. So, we packed our bags and drove through the night. It was a couple of hours to where, where Ross lived. And yeah, don't remember much about the journey. I know it was raining and it was a sort of awful February night. And we got there, and it was hard because Ross had been taken away. So, we couldn't see him. I don't know, maybe in some ways that was a blessing, but I just, felt his loss as soon as we got to the house. And I walked in, and on his sideboard, there was a picture of Ross and I when he was a boy. And we'd gone to like an animal petting farm, and he'd got a little duckling in his hand. And next to that picture in the frame was a very similar one of Ross and his son Charlie, who was 3 at the time, and Charlie was holding a duckling as well.
Wow.
And just that, I fell to my knees. I was just, just overwhelmed by the loss. And it felt like nothing I'd ever felt before. Obviously, but now when I look back, I think it was like, I don't know, it's like falling through just dark space, and sort of feeling that you would never ever reach the ground. Yeah, that's where everything changed.
It's horrific. And yeah, I mean, I can feel the emotion now, from you, and it's still very new, and obviously it's going to remain, part of you, for the rest of your life moving forward. And I know that you're obviously doing things because he actually had left a message for you and the family, right? Well, actually, I'll let you explain rather than me explain. So he left a letter, is that right?
Yeah, he left a long letter. It was taken away by the police, and it took us a while to get it back, which was difficult. We felt as though we were sort of almost, well, we were pleading to get the letter back, because in a moment like that, knowing that he'd written a letter to us, it was hard to not to be able to read it, because that was, he was speaking to us. That was his voice. And anyway, we eventually got the letter back, and he spoke to each one of us in turn, including his little boy Charlie, and just asked Charlie to be brave, and to be anything that he wanted to be in life. To the family in general, he said, please fight for mental health. The support is just not there. And what he meant by that was that he'd suffered from severe depression for over 10 years. And again, he was a fighter. He was a wonderful, loving son, loved his own family. And we just, couldn't believe. And when I look back to think that he said to us, please fight for mental health, the support is just not there. Sorry, I was just going on to explain that after 10 years of suffering from depression, he went to the NHS to ask for therapy, and he was put on a 6-month waiting list, and he died 2 weeks into that wait. But that line just sort of in the letter jumped out at me, and I was just, I don't know, it's just the feeling that somebody who knew that their time had come and that they weren't going to be part of this life any longer, for that person, excuse me, for that person to recognize that there was a cause to be championed beyond their own life in a world that they wouldn't be part of, has just moved me so much. And when I got back on my feet, I sort of determined to do whatever I could to honour what was effectively his dying wish. So as a journalist, I knew how to do research. So I threw myself into research and found some shocking things that I hadn't come across, even as a journalist for 20 years who covered just about every subject going, or that's how it felt anyway, that I hadn't come across this huge silent pandemic.
Yes.
And I realised that it was the biggest killer of young people in this country under 35. All of that promise and potential. Not COVID, not cancer, not road accidents, not drugs, suicide. And it struck me immediately. Why aren't we talking about this? It's as though there's some invisible gas out there, and people are falling to the floor, and we're just stepping over them and pretending we haven't noticed this awful, stain on society.
Mike, sorry to interrupt you. Was this the first time that Ross had kind of reached out, asked for support, or because you mentioned a 12-year struggle there? Had there been? I mean, when did he first share this with you and the family? And what happened on this journey? Was it really kind of the last part where it was like, I definitely need the help now? How did that all kind of come to fruition?
No, we had been backwards and forwards to GPs and counsellors, and we talked at length about his mental health. And actually, in Christmas, the previous Christmas, so that's sort of Christmas 2020. We went to visit him. It was during lockdown, so we even stayed outside. Ross and Charlotte and Charlie were in the conservatory that Ross had built, and we stood outside. And we would normally have stayed, but we couldn't stay because of COVID. So that was the last time we saw him, and we celebrated the progress that he'd made with his mental health. We all agreed, we were talking, reflecting on the year that had just passed, and we all, agreed that the best thing about 2020 was that he'd seen such a marked improvement in his mental health. And that's the last time we saw him because of COVID. So we spoke at length. It wasn't, for some families it comes completely out of the blue, and my heart goes out to anybody in this situation, but especially if you had no inkling, and that's not uncommon for people to just leave no note, no explanation, no record of mental poor health. But Ross was different in that respect, that he was somebody who could talk to us, at least, who could talk to his family about his mental illness. So, but the thing is, he got very good at pretending. He wanted to protect the people that he loved. He wanted to protect the people around him. So he pretended to be happy. And the night before he died, we could see that he was very down again.
Right.
So there's been a sudden decline since Christmas. And we spoke to him on FaceTime, and he just said that he was very tired, and he said to his mum, I'll be okay, I'll go for a run in the morning and everything's going to be okay. We think he must have known at that moment that he wouldn't be with us by the following morning.
Right.
So,
It's okay, Mike. We appreciate you sharing this with us. So just take your time.
that's okay. I mean, the reason that I do share it is because, I found out that, we were far from alone, that there are hundreds of thousands of mums, dads, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters out there who've been through, a similar experience. And I desperately, kind of on Ross's behalf, wanted to reach out to them. And I saw that the charitable sector, certainly in suicide prevention, looked very fragmented. There were some great charities. There are some great charities out there, big and small, who are doing superb work. But I think they tend to operate in silos. So one of the things that I tried to determine to do also was to sort of do my little bit, really, to create some kind of unity, bring the charities together to speak with one voice. Because I always say, politicians won't like this, but as a journalist, I always used to think you don't talk to politicians, you scream at them. And this is what I'm now finding, that we have to come together, because if this isn't one of the greatest mental health crises facing this country, I don't know what is. And if this loss is not being recognised by politicians, I would just plead to any that might be watching this that, please use your influence. Suicide is preventable. We can change this. Everybody agrees that it can be prevented. So my question is, and the question of the charity that I've set up called Baton of Hope is, if suicide is preventable, why aren't we preventing them? These statistics have stagnated for more than 20 years. They rise a bit, they fall a bit, they rise a bit, they fall a bit. But basically, we haven't changed. What we're doing isn't working. We need to challenge the status quo, take a different look, shift that prism, and look at things in a different way. And I was going to say I'm going into rant mood. So
No,
I like
it, Dan. Don't worry about that. But it needs to be heard, it needs to be said, and it's as a matter of urgency, actually. We're not messing around here, because some of us are grieving, and it's incredibly important. As you said, it's the biggest killer of like young people at the moment, for a long time. So, but how we're not talking about this, to me, just seems absolutely horrific. And what I was going to say was, am I making this up? I feel like I might be making this up, but I felt like there was a specific minister. Was there a minister for, I can't remember the title, whether it's for mental health or something like, have I made that up? I'm sure it has something.
No.
And I thought, wow.
There was a minister for suicide prevention who was Nadine Dorris, and if I've got this right, Gillian Keegan took over, and the title was dropped. The suicide prevention minister part of it was dropped. I went to see Gillian Keegan, had a good conversation with her. I went to see Sajid Javid, the then health secretary. I think we've had, 3 health secretaries since. And this is what I mean about the politics. It's not necessarily the people. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But it's the system too. On the day that we had a private conversation with Sajid Javid, and for the first time he talked publicly about the loss of his own brother to suicide, and announced a 10-year suicide prevention plan. That plan has now been parked, along with lots of other bills and strategies, plans that were going through. I think an online protection bill for children, as far as I know. That's been parked. And talk about politics getting in the way of progress. This is something that there is a lot of cross-party support for. So why isn't there a mechanism in which these longer-term issues with large cross-party support can be protected and are not just battered away at the whim of political leadership campaigns and that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, I do think, we're not angry and there's no blame or anything, but we are seeking change, radical change. And through Baton of Hope, we aim to challenge these politicians and ask them what they're doing to improve suicide prevention. And let's see the results.
Tell us more then about the Baton of Hope. Tell us all about it. So we want to hear what your mission is, and then how we can support your mission, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. You may have noticed that I've dropped it into the conversation a few times there already.
Good. It needs to be in the conversation.
Yeah, one day I was talking to some other people, including a good friend who lost his son Jordan to suicide, Steve Phillip, who runs the Jordan Legacy in Jordan's name. And we were talking, about our sort of mutual experiences, and we were saying that, a lot of people say, oh, you can't, there's no single issue connecting all of the suicides. It's always for very complex and different reasons. And I certainly don't agree with that. I think there is one thing that,
I agree with that too.
The loss of hope connects every suicide, whatever the circumstances are. It comes from a complete loss of hope. So we got talking, and we just decided what can we do to help restore hope in the world that we're living in at the moment, where we just tumbled out of the COVID crisis. We're heading into a deep economic recession. There are dark murmurs about the possibility of nuclear war. Children are growing up where the very survival of the planet is being questioned, really for the first time.
And personally, I feel like this time is a real time where people are needing support. Actually, the amount of people I have spoken to who really finding it a struggle. The past 3 years are really struggling, and to move those mechanisms and those support mechanisms and take them away during this time is just it shouldn't be happening. We should be increasing support and looking at this more, not kind of hiding it in the back room and waiting till there's a better time to deal with it. This is a time when people need that support. So sorry, do carry on, Mike.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think, this is the time. We can't afford to go on wasting lives like this. And I think it goes through every sector of society. We've been talking about politics, but in education, in the media, in the charitable sector, we need a different approach and a different way forward. We need to offer hope by highlighting what is out there and showing best practice and talking about why it's working, and whether we can, use those shining examples to further the cause of suicide prevention. But it's I think it was Archbishop Desmond Tutu who said that we've got to stop fishing people out of the river and go upstream to find out why they're jumping in. And there's there's so much truth in that. And again, this is why I think education is important. And it's one of the questions that we're asking is, where are the conversations in the classrooms? Where are the lessons? Where are the lectures in universities and colleges? Where's the political debate? Where's the public discourse on all of this? Because one thing's for sure, unless we can talk about it and smash the stigma and normalize what is going on, if that's the right word, the sooner that we can get to grips with how we solve the problem. I mean, we're still talking about committing suicide. It's a threat, and I'm not, I'm not a stickler for things like that in general, but I recognize now why that is quite hurtful, and it's because it harks back to a time more than 60 years ago when suicide was considered to be illegal. That illegal status was lifted in 1961, and here we are more than 60 years later, still using the language of the Dark Ages. Ross wasn't perfect, but he didn't commit a crime.
No, did not.
And in my opinion, he didn't commit a sin either. So, you know, there are questions for the church and for all of us. We all have a responsibility, whether you are at the highest level of government or whether it's just sending an extra text to your mate to say, how are you really? You know,
I did that after your talk, actually, literally. I think a lot of people did after your talk. When I obviously first saw you speak in person, I think a lot of people went outside on their phones or during that day or that evening, messaged people they were concerned about. And that's how it touched me. And I was like, I have to pay more attention to my friends and their behaviors and just noticing more, you know, just noticing if anything's changed and not being afraid to kind of address it and sort of say, well, you're looking a bit tired lately, or you're not eating as much when we're going out, or you're drinking more, whatever it is, and having the bravery, I guess, to speak up if I do notice changes. And it was you and your talk that kind of made me brought that into my consciousness more and be more aware about that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that's gratifying to hear, and thank you. It's about talking, I think, and it's about listening. And I wanted to do something practical as well, something sort of hands-on. So I helped to establish 2 branches. It's a national charity, a fantastic charity called Talk Club, which, as the name suggests, is a talking group for men. And in my home city of Sheffield, I helped, along with others, to establish 2 talking groups based at the Sheffield United Stadium and at the Sheffield Wednesday Stadium. And actually, it's been great because, well, the reason we had to do both is that, you know, everybody agrees that mental health is more important even than football.
Yay!
But there are Wednesday supporters who won't go to Bramall Lane, and there are United supporters who won't go to Hillsborough. So we had to open 2. And it's, you know, if I can do a quick plug there, if you see that, club.
You know, it's a real stroke of genius, like kind of doing these in football clubs, because I think like people associate football with masculinity, and being masculine means not talking about your emotions, not sharing, being, you know, tough and all that man up rubbish that was, you know, well, we're kind of like moving away from that now, thank God. So to do in those locations with, you know, fans, I think is just a stroke of genius, personally.
Yeah, I think, you know, as men, we kind of have to take responsibility that we've been living a lie. You know, do we really think that rugby players don't cry, that boxers don't cry, that football players don't cry? You know, who was it that put that phrase together, strong, silent type?
Yeah, I mean, please.
Why did you put those 2 words together, strong and silent? I think, you know, I always cite people like Tyson Fury, who's proven himself to be, you know, one of the fittest guys physically on the planet. But he's also somebody who has been brave and not afraid to express his vulnerability in terms of his mental well-being, and to accept, you know, that vulnerability isn't weakness. That's, I think, for a lot of men, that really is the problem, that we that vulnerability makes you less of a man. And last night, actually, at Talk Club at Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, we had one of the first team players, Will Vaux, who joined in Talk Club. He's the first footballer in Sheffield we've had former footballers, but first sort of football playing at the moment to come and join us at Talk Club. And he was an absolute inspiration, so open, so transparent, and just sort of joined in with the rest of us. And I just encourage anybody who's got a position of, you know, influence and responsibility like that to, if they can, to use it to promote this, because there's a long way to go. But you're absolutely right. I think, you know, if you put mental health over the door, there are probably, you know, not so many men who would walk through that door. If you put football with a bit of mental health thrown in, even though it's nothing to do with football, actually. It's just that we happen to be at the football stadium. But, you know, I've seen how men can change by opening up rather than bottling up, and it's great to see.
It's amazing. I was having a conversation with another one of our contributors, Lyle, actually, and we were talking about the events industry. And I know in every sector, in every industry, in every community, they're very similar problems where there's not really places for men to go and speak openly. And even he was saying, I'd love to be able to set up something within the events community where, you know, where men can come and talk and come and share. We feel like there's lots of other communities for other people, and especially when we look at kind of like, if we look at the LGBTQ plus community, for example, if we look at people of colour, because the focus is very much on that sort of inclusiveness at the moment, you know, there's a lot of focus on that, and we're forgetting about everybody. To be inclusive, everybody needs to have the same support and opportunities to share. So he wanted to set something like that up. So I'm going to get him inspired by your talk club, and we might not steal the name, but but certainly getting inspired by that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, equality and inclusivity, you know, obviously applies to every single one of us. And again, it sort of goes back to the point about responsibility. Whoever you are, whatever background you're from or that you live in, we can all get involved in this. And I suppose that's one of the core messages of Baton of Hope. It's the universality of it that's actually designed into the baton itself. And if you'll allow me to tell you a little bit about the actual baton.
Brilliant.
I was introduced to a company called Thomas Light, who based in London and are goldsmiths and silversmiths to the royal family. You know, they offered to make the actual baton, and they've just released the final design. And personally, I think it's beautiful. It's heavy with symbolism, and I'll send you some pictures. But it's basically it's got a central lattice work, which, when you look closely, depicts people holding each other aloft in a circular community, and then an upward spiral. Everything's sort of directional in the baton, an upward spiraling gold and silver to an opening that contains the semicolon, which, as you may know, is increasingly becoming a symbol for people who've tried to take their own lives but have survived and are now grateful and examples of how, you know, you can come through this period of darkness. People do that.
I didn't know that, actually. Yeah,
no, I didn't know it until relatively recently. Certainly not until after we lost Ross. But it's there because it's, you know, as a semicolon is in a sentence, it's indicative of the fact that there's more to come. This sentence isn't over. You know, this life isn't over. There's hope. There's a future. And we see that as a beautiful symbol that we've kind of stolen for Baton. And we haven't stolen. We haven't stolen.
How heavy actually is it, though?
I don't know. It won't be made until next year. So it's got a very sturdy handle, which again is all wrapped into the sort of symbolism of it. And it's been designed, the designers are fantastic, and the craftsmen and women at Thomas Light are fantastic. I've been down to visit them, and, you know, I'm just sort of full of admiration for them. And they believe in the project, which is so important to us, that they believe in what we're doing. And so it's going to carry a lot of meaning.
Of course. And from a practical perspective, you have, like, isn't the baton going to take this journey through the UK, and what's going to happen with these kind of, or I mean, I know obviously you're in planning stages, etc., but what is the plan to kind of have these hotspots of conversation, education? How does the baton come into that? Right.
Well, the baton, it's not a sort of journey in the sense of a race or a walk, but we will take the baton from city to city. We've got, you know, we're hoping it can become an annual event, but in the first year we've got a 2-week window starting on June the 25th next year, launching in Glasgow, and then we're going to all of the capitals, Edinburgh, Cardiff, Belfast, London, and lots of other places in between, Newcastle, Manchester, Brighton, you know, all over the UK, Cardiff. And we will end in London with a march from Trafalgar Square to the Houses of Parliament, and we're inviting bereaved families and friends to join us at the head of the march, and anyone who wants to join in with us to, you know, not only let your voices be heard, but to use the voices of all of those people who are no longer here to use their own and speak on their behalf, to tell Parliament that, you know, we, the country, have taken responsibility. This is a baton. Now we pass it to you. You take responsibility. And as we go around the country, we want to highlight some of the great work that's going on out there that other people are doing. We want to open up a conversation. We want to smash the stigma. We are campaigning for practical change in many areas that we've spoken about. So yeah, that's the dream. And,
well, you know, we have an audience of event kind of professionals and planners and organizers that's who I work with. So, I mean, if there was any support that you needed, what would be really useful help right now and, you know, leading up to, the launch of this event, and then actually during the event as well, I guess that, you know, you're going to need support and venues, and I don't know, have you got that?
We're a startup charitable initiative, started from a blank canvas this year. So, you know, we don't have much money. So if people can help us to raise money, or if people can volunteer on the ground in some of these cities, we're asking people to lobby their MPs to, you know, take an interest in this campaign. Lots of things. We've got people volunteering to do all kinds of things, to take the baton into the air, to fly it, to take it, to dive with it, to carry it on horseback, to go in a hydroplane with it. You name it, you know, just about every form of transport you can think of. So, and we've had hundreds of people coming on board and registering their interest on our website. So if I can, you know, make a plea to people, if they do get a second, to have a look at our website and register their interest if they'd like to. And
we'll put a link on there. We put a link in the notes and everything. Don't worry about that.
That's great. And then they'll get the sort of monthly newsletter, which will sort of talk a bit more about how people can be involved, because, as I say, it's a universal thing. We want as many people to share in the hope that's provided by the Baton of Hope. So yeah, it's sorry, that's the end of my sales talk now.
No, it wasn't very salesy at all. I thought you were very reserved, actually. I'd have been like, right, I need this, and this. If anyone can help with this, I'd have a little shop.
I mean, you know, what we're hoping to do is put on a bit of a road show. We're trying not to impose our model, if you like, on each city, because each city is different, and there's different talent within a different cities. There are different charities, there are different cultures, and we want to draw in all of those cultures and get a feel for what people want to do. We've got a lot of work to do, and you know, there will be things like all of the logistics involved, you know, the organizing of the event management, all of that. We're working as fast as we can to bring people on board who can help us.
I saw that Elizabeth Heron of Orange Door is one of your kind of supporters. Would she be helping like the logistical side of things? Or I haven't caught up with her about that, but I noticed
Orange Door have sort of joined us as critical friends and advisors on a marketing front. So, you know, we're looking forward to sort of working with them. But at this stage, we're still throwing open the doors and saying to anybody, if you think you have anything to offer, we will find a place for you. So yeah, please make contact with us.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. As I said, we'll put any links that you share with us so that people can reach out or learn more about Baton of Hope. Is there anything else that any other message that you would like to leave our viewers and listeners with as they move forward over the next few weeks and into the new year?
I think, one of the core principles of Baton of Hope is just compassion, and we're hoping that we can encourage people in all walks of life just to, a little bit of compassion goes a long way. And although I've mentioned Talk Club before, it's called Talk Club, obviously, but it's also Listening Club. And again, we hope that through that compassion that people will listen. And I think we need to change our mindset a little bit, at least. For example, just in the use of language when we talk about people who self-harm, being attention seeking. If we think of it in terms of attention needing, imagine how much pain you have to be in mentally to physically harm yourself in the way that people do. Let's see that as attention needing rather than attention seeking. Let's just sort of move the prism a little bit. We've just quite rightly remembered the soldiers who died fighting for their country. That's absolutely right. But again, just change that prism slightly. Suicide kills more soldiers than armed conflict and combat. Yeah. And then this is one thing that we don't remember and we don't reflect upon. And that's not to take away from the sort of, the deep importance of remembrance each year. But again, I think if we just start to change our outlook slightly towards mental health, I think we can make a huge amount of progress together.
Agreed. And you're so right about that use of language as well, in that there's enough, and well, I don't think there's shame, but there's enough perceived shame anyway, I guess, for individuals with whatever they're kind of needing to do to comfort themselves in that time. And then for health professionals, I guess, and people who offer guidance, or anyone really, to be using that kind of language, I think adds to the shame. We, as you said, we need to smash the stigma. We need to move away from the shame element of that, because I don't even know why shame is included in this conversation, but that language for me invokes shame, and I don't like it. Essentially.
Yeah, no, again, you're absolutely right. And I think, some of the agencies out there, some of the professional bodies, nobody got out of bed on that morning of the 21st of February, and decided to make a bereaved family's life even harder. That's not the way that humans work. But I think when you confront the body, I'm thinking again, for example, like the police service and the difficulties we had, their computers weren't speaking to the coroner's office computers. So you get this sort of glacial feeling that, you're fighting bureaucracy and you're fighting some monolith, and like, again, with the police, and I have a lot of personal support for the police. I've had police officers in my family, and they have an extremely difficult job to do, and they're exposed on a regular basis to suicides and having to deal with the aftermath. But I think it's the body as a whole that sometimes we just need to change how it operates, because if ever you need help in this world, believe me, you need help when you're faced with a situation like that, and not hurdles. It's as simple as that.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for your time. Our time has come to an end now, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And as you said, kind of sharing that there is a glimmer of hope, and that you're working towards bringing hope around this theme and this message. And, I hope people do get involved in the Baton of Hope, which I'm sure they will, and that it's extremely successful and it's much needed. And I think it's fantastic that you and, your family and your supporters are driving this mission forward. So congratulations, and thank you for doing that for everyone, for all of us, you know. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your interest, and thanks for inviting me to talk about it. It's much appreciated.
And take care. See you soon.